I would like to push it a bit more so people could get the idea of, hey, we getting healthy food, fresh, right out of my backyard or my front yard, and promote that a bit more with healthy eating because it's something that a lot of people starting to get into now.
Welcome back to Pushing Your Peace Podcast, the number one podcast in the region for living a progressive and happier life. On this episode, I'm joined by Tevin Ramsey, the visionary entrepreneur behind TCH, an agricultural business transforming the landscape of the Turks and Caicos Islands. We dive into his journey, the challenges of entrepreneurship, the power of financial literacy, and how he's building a sustainable future through agriculture. This conversation is packed with gems you don't want to miss. So sit back, relax, and let's get ready to push some peace. Welcome to Pushing Your Peers podcast, Tevin Ramsey. It's a pleasure to have you on as an entrepreneur and someone who is highly involved in agriculture. So I want you to tell the audience, what is TCH?
So TCH it actually stands for Turks and Caicos Horticulture. The reason for naming it TCH is because I want to represent Turks and Caicos first and foremost, and also agriculture in general. But with the word horticulture is sort of a broad meaning, but in essence, I'll be dealing with agriculture as well as plants in general. As for the business itself or the company, we specialize in hydroponics, mainly different varieties of lettuce and different herbs. So for example, you have your mint, basil, chives, as well as thyme as well. We haven't started thyme yet, but we're going to be in the process of testing that as well. But for now, those are the main ones that we're getting started with. And then later down the line, I'll just give you a little sneak peek. I haven't shared this with much people yet, but we'll start to do like different type of plants that's edible. So for example, if you have like a plantain in your front yard, I wish I could show you it all. But if you have like a plantain in your front yard, what we want to do later down the line is basically transform that planter into an edible garden rather than you having, for example, just ornamental plants or plants you just water and put fertilizer on and you don't get anything from it except for a little bit of beauty. More or less, you could have a little bit of beauty in your front yard or in the back of your yard, as well as have something that you could pick fruits or vegetables from and eat fresh inside of your kitchen. So in essence, trying to transform the way we eat here inside of the Caribbean in general, or even impacting the world. And by impacting the world, for me, I would do that using social media and alternatively any sort of platforms that I could sort of spread it using video or audio.
What inspired you to start this agricultural agricultural business, which is kind of not our thing right now for our generation. I see a lot of our generation getting into water sports and the taxi services and all these other business adventures. But you are taking more of an agricultural road. Why?
So my reason for taking agriculture, I actually was into growing plants from a very young age, probably like from about 10, between 10 and 12, if I remember correctly. I used to have like little peas plants. I had little small tomatoes, sweet peppers that I grew. It wasn't big, just a little small garden that I had. So it started from back then. And then over time, I gave it a rest, started other interests as well. And I always came back to gardening, to be honest. Like it for me as a person, it's more like I wouldn't say a stress relief, but it relaxes you. It's like a peace of mind for me. In terms of getting into it as well, something that I've seen that happened, especially recently, is the need for food security here inside of Turks and Caicos Islands and with a lot of countries as well. So even if you look at some of those larger countries, for example, the UK, the US, Canada, to be honest with you, if you do the research and you check the statistics, they actually cannot provide enough food for themselves. And especially here, we rely on a lot of those countries, whether it's Central America, South America, other countries inside of the Caribbean, and in particular, our most imported items come from the US. Now, if there's something that goes wrong in the US, for example, when we had the whole pandemic thing that happened. I wasn't here in Ireland at the time when it happened, but I still had issues that happened with me while I was away as well. The thing that I noticed here in particular, there were cases where there was shortage of certain items that you couldn't get in the shop, or also the price of items went up because the price over there went up in the US. And the thing about it is that creates or opens a window for us to be very vulnerable and at the mercy of the next country entirely with something that you need, which is a necessity, which is food to sustain yourself. And I think that we should actually get started inside of that industry. I'm not saying that we haven't started. There are persons that are growing and also producing as well, but it's not consistent to say, all right, every week I know consistently I can get X, Y, Z in this amount. And that's something that I want to try to tackle and target as well, consistency and also availability of some of these produce. Like for now, because we're quite small and we just recently started, we can't supply large numbers, but the whole idea is to have a foundation in order to scale into um, that figure or that amount that we could produce, at least have a certain percentage of the country itself that can be sustainable or being self-sustainable as a country at a certain percentage. My target is a bit ambitious, but if you don't have an ambitious target, then what's the point? And to
Exactly.
add on to that as well, I have a passion for it. So when I got back here, and just to give everybody an idea, I was away out of country for a while, probably several years. And when I got back, I started from scratch, from nothing, to be honest. And I had the idea, and it was always lingering in my head. And what I did was I just worked on it while I was here, and probably like over, give or take, over a year to 2 years. I was putting money into it. I also reached out to the MSME program, TC Invest. They also helped me quite a bit, and a few other persons as well. And the remainder of it, I funded myself. During that time, I had a lot of losses. I had a lot of challenges. I almost wanted to give up at one point, but then I had a joy for it and a passion for it so much where I just couldn't stop. So I used to test things all the time. I had issues with bugs, stuff dying, and also keep in mind the environment we live in, which is in the Caribbean, which is in the tropics, is very challenging. If you do a bit of research of other persons that grow in the Caribbean, they have a lot of challenges, and it's a very unique climate, so to speak, because we got the heat and humidity. So trying to create an environment or grow certain plants to actually survive here is a bit challenging, but it's possible.
Amazing, man. Now, you mentioned earlier in your dialogue um, having a system where you go into persons' gardens and make things edible. Is that a service you offer through your company where you would actually go and set up gardens for people?
Currently, no. That's something for
Okay.
future. So
Okay,
that is
got
something
you.
that's in the works. Yeah, it's in the works because there's a lot of persons that have reached out to me, or I've seen them around. Because there's only a small percentage that actually know I have this business because I haven't been like advertising or promoting it as much, just on my pages or someone I know or they see me with the shirt, they ask me about it. I would say, hey, yes, I'm doing XYZ. I'll give a card out here and
Yeah.
there. But a lot of persons would say, man, I tried growing, let's just say tomatoes or sweet peppers or whatnot. They could get so far growing it, but then you start to have issues either with the sun, the heat, which is from the sun itself, or the humidity, and alternatively bugs. They tend to have a lot of issues. And then you could go ahead and spray it with the chemicals, but the problem is you then defeat the purpose of having fresh food because if you turn around and spray it with harmful chemicals, you then introducing that in your body now. So there
Mm,
are organic options that you can use, and also using, for example, like sticky traps to trap the bugs and whatnot. But I would always recommend them to do like the organic options in terms of growing their plants. And with regard to that, I would say when we do get into that, I would like to push it a bit more so people could get the idea of, hey, we getting healthy food, fresh, right out my backyard or my front yard. and promote that a bit more with healthy eating, because it's something that a lot of people starting to get into. Now, I'm sure you've probably seen it around now. A
Oh,
lot of
for sure.
persons have health issues, or maybe family members that had health issues, and a lot of persons starting to get a bit more healthy, which is good. Which is good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm one of those persons who juice and do all these things. So, and I'm a runner as well. So I'm one of those
Okay.
persons who are, on the journey. And I want to talk about the end goal of TCH. I mean, you talk about having these ambitious goals, but what do you want the future of the Turks and Caicos to look like in regards to agriculture, one, and what imprint or what legacy would you want TCH to have on that?
I'll try to keep that one quite short, but honestly speaking, I would want Turks and Caicos to have a level of self-sustainability. That's number one, first and foremost. For TCH, I would like to have a big part in achieving that goal, and at least I would say about 60 to 70% of food to be produced here on island. I know that there's a large
Mm,
percentage of items that can't grow here, or it would take years and years to even figure out how to get it to grow here. Not saying it ain't possible, but at least if we can hit a target of at least about 60%, I think that would be ideal. In terms of legacy and leaving a mark per se, as a company, I don't want to just look at it as me, or mine, because I do have kids, by the way, and I want to leave something for them. And even if they're not like in the business on a daily basis, I'd prefer for them to have an idea of how to run it, how to operate it, and allow it to continuously grow. And whether that's finding somebody to put in place there that could more or less do a bit more or better than they can, or if they could actually do it themselves, then they do it. But with leaving a mark, I just want to be in the forefront of promoting it, even if it's not a case of, hey, I'm not making something from it, which is not the main goal. Obviously, you set up a business to make a profit, but at least have some level of impact. Because if anybody asks a question, I'll give you the answer. I'll tell you. But the hard part is when actually going forward to execute in the time it take. That's where a lot of people fall off, or they give up or quit.
thank you for sharing that. Not having you, we started our dialogue talking about entrepreneurship. I see the government has been very, very strong when it comes to supporting young entrepreneurs. And you have also been someone who benefited from a government program called the AMS AME program. Why should we focus on entrepreneurship moving forward? I know you mentioned it earlier, but this now is going to be something that's going to be on record. Why do you want to see more entrepreneurs here in the Turks and Caicos Islands?
To be honest, the reason for that, or that sentiment that I have, is because the cost of living is one. Two, honestly speaking, if you do the maths in terms of, let's just say you're just working, you can more or less save to an extent, but saving only takes you so far. The average person, this is going to sound a bit, I'm going to be very blunt, but the average person probably lives up until what, 75 years old, 70, 75. That's average. And let's just say you retire at 60, you got about 15, 20 years left, just throwing numbers out. And you have to take in consideration how much you need every year or every month to sustain yourself. And to be honest with you, if you do those numbers, you calculate it, let's just say you need 15, 20 years, and you work out how much your consumption or the amount of money that you would need every year, and you multiply that by 15 or 20 years, and you get that figure. Most times that's like over 500, 600,000. Most people won't have that saved working a regular job, to be honest with you. And even persons who make, let's just say, over six figures, a lot of them don't save as much or invest the money. It's almost like a foreign language to a lot of people. And it's something that
Right.
I tend to sort of promote. And the thing is, with starting a business or getting into entrepreneurship as well, I'm not saying to ditch your day job or just throw it in the dump as soon as you get started, but at least even if you're working for a period of time, secure yourself a bit. Obviously, you got bills and whatnot. Secure yourself, put money aside every month. And let's just say you have an emergency fund, you fill that as well. After you fill the emergency fund, everything else after that, you could put into a business or maybe an idea you have. Even if you sit on that idea for 6 months or a year and you just working it as you at your job, um, you could then take that funds that you're starting to build up and put into that same business. But just make sure every day you make, a little step forward, or even every other day or week, set little small achievable goals where you could reach. And the thing about it is, if you look around, pay attention to the people that are actually getting ahead and who's winning at life per se. And when I say winning, doesn't necessarily mean money, but
Right.
they're comfortable in terms of they could wake up today or tomorrow and they're able to live life. They could travel, they could do things without having to stress about it. Because a lot of people, you can't go, let's just say your car, your car got like four flats. A lot of people cannot jump up tomorrow and say, let me buy four tires for my car. Think about that for a
Mm,
second. So
yeah.
if you can't do that and you carry on through life all that time, unable to do that, so that means you always in a red, and not necessarily in a negative in your account, but you're always in an emergency state because if an emergency pops up, you can't handle it. What do you think is gonna happen when you get a lot older? And the thing about it is, when you do get older, it's gonna be a lot harder for you to actually do the things that you can do while you're young. So if you get started early, get into entrepreneurship, and a job is just literally a catapult or even a foundation for you to build up either skills. You could build up a
Mm,
foundation of funds as well, and that could jumpstart you to either investing, starting a business. And back to what I was saying too, with paying attention to persons that are actually getting ahead in life. The persons that are actually quite far, or they're quite okay in life. What do they have? What all of them have in common? Either a business or investments, to be honest with you.
right.
Unless they get inheritance from family or maybe a friend or something like that. But otherwise, everybody else have a business. So that's why I tend to push it, and that's why I lean more towards entrepreneurship as well. And keep in mind, again, having a job is not a problem. Not only because I have one, I'm saying that, but it's
Mm,
it's a start and it's a foundation. And maybe you're the type of person that don't want to get into entrepreneurship. That's perfectly fine. But you still have to invest in some way, whether you invest in yourself or
right.
alternatively invest in skills, which is technically coming back to yourself as well. Build up your
Right.
skills, build up your experience. That way you could transfer or translate those skills to actually more income, and then you could save and put a little bit aside and just have your money working for you rather than you having to always be putting in hours because you only got 24 hours.
Indeed. Tavin, you've mentioned a lot about uh, you shared a lot of advice, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about, and this is going to be the last part of this segment here. Let's talk
Mhm.
about some of the challenges that you faced here in the Turks and Caicos being an entrepreneur, and any advice you've had for the audience when you overcame these challenges.
I would say one of the main ones was funding at first, to be honest with you. But like I said, I did approach TC Invest, and they were very, very helpful with the whole process. They made sure, like I got everything in place. I was able to get the right amount that I applied for, and they were pushing me to do more, actually, to be honest, which is quite good. But with regards to funding, I'm 100% sure, like a lot of persons probably had similar issues or ran into the same problems. Um, that would be one of the main ones. But with TC Invest there, and you have other private persons as well, don't get me wrong, that actually can assist if you speak to the right people. So networking comes in play there too, which I did a lot of. Another thing as well would be depending on the business, and in mine in particular, I would say I leaned a lot on the agricultural department, and two persons in particular I would say would be a guy named Mario. He was very, very helpful, and he helped me quite a bit. I had a lot of questions that I needed answers for, and I asked a lot of questions that I like to know and understand. Also, I'll say the director as well, the agriculture. She was quite helpful as well with helping me get certain things in place, getting things done. And there's a few other private persons I don't know the name of, but they assisted me as well in getting ahead. Another challenge would be with regards to the business itself was the fact that when I got started, I didn't really have much persons to lean into aside from the person from agriculture department. And then there's a few persons that over in the US that I source a lot of my items from that they were
Mm,
able to assist me with a lot because they have like larger greenhouses, like commercial size and stuff like that. So they already been through this rodeo a long time and at a way larger scale, probably 100x scale. So they was able to assist me, and that's why it came off as if, like I know quite a bit because I was learning from them as well as the persons from the agricultural department. They helped me a lot, like a lot. And the main challenges were sorry the fact that starting something that not much persons has done here, in particular in Turks, you I couldn't more or less go to someone that already have it set up and ask them certain questions. So as I was going, I had to figure stuff out, and a lot of things I ran into roadblocks. I had a lot of problems. Even up to now, I still have problems, but that's okay. I have them early
yeah.
while I still small, and when I scale, at least I already run into probably over 100 problems because I already had that issue. I could, resolve it a lot quicker compared to the person
Mm.
who would just get started. And if they just start big one time and they run into that issue, it's a larger problem initially. But I would say those would be my main two. And another thing as well that I would say is because of certain businesses that you're running, networking. So at
Mm.
first, I wasn't doing much networking at first. And a friend of mine just keeps saying, like, hey, man, you need to, start meeting different people, getting to know them, etc. And it don't matter if they're not inside the industry, but they could give you insights on a lot of issues that they may encounter, especially structure as well. That helps a lot because a friend of mine, he definitely, just who he is, but he helped me quite a bit. And I had questions I asked him because he went through a lot too with different businesses and stuff like that. And now he's doing quite well for himself. And a lot of his advice and issues he had that he shared with me in details out of confidence helped me quite a bit too. And I avoided a lot of those problems because I look at what he went through and he'd say, hey,
Right.
if I could have do it a bit differently, I would do it this way. And I just took the advice and run with it. So I would suggest networking. So those would be my three, I would say.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tavin. And it has been such an insightful half of the show. And I just want to thank you for coming on. Now, you wouldn't be a guest on Pushing Your Peers if you didn't get to, of course, push your peers. So, any word that begins with the letter P that has been transformational to your journey, it can be one word or multiple words, it's completely up to you. You now have the floor to push your peers.
Um, I would say one in particular would be passion. That's one. The reason why I say passion is because if you're doing something that you're not passionate about or you don't like, the thing about that is whenever you run into the hard problems or even problems in general, you're going to be more likely to quit or to stop because it doesn't excite you or you're not in it because you like it. You're just in it to make money. Like, yes, you have business that you do that with. Now, the alternative to that is if you do a business that you're not really passionate about, what most people do is they find other persons that are passionate or that enjoys it or that's way better than them in that business to run it for them.
Mm,
So that's the loophole there. But otherwise, if you're going to be inside the business or you really want to have this business grow, you would definitely have to be passionate about it. Because if you can't, this is my personal opinion, and I'm saying this because I went through it, and if I didn't have the passion for what I'm doing now, I probably would have quit a long time, because having, and I'll share this too, having, let's just say, equipment worth thousands of dollars just sitting or you waiting for this part or this section to come in order for you to get started or whatnot, or for you to go to that next step, and you waiting months for it to ship, or maybe you run into a roadblock and you making $0, and all you're doing is just spending thousands over several months, over a year or two. That right there is painful. I'll be honest with you.
I
That's one of
can
the most painful
imagine.
parts with getting started for me. I'll be honest. And if I didn't have no passion for what I wanted to do, or have like a vision of what I wanted, or see the end goal in sight and just say, hey, this is the time I got to suck it up and deal with me having to put the investment in, the time, the money, and not see a return for that long period of time, it's quite hard. So I would say definitely passion is one of the main ones. And I would say the next thing too is persistence. Now, I would say that I struggled with a little bit of that from time to time. And when I say struggle with it, meaning that, you have some days you're quite tired and you just don't want to do it. Sometimes you just have to keep pushing, because if you don't push and put a little bit effort in, and like I said earlier, either on a daily basis, or even if you put like a little small effort every week. You set a target, say, all right, I need to achieve XYZ this week or this month or every day. You tend to get ahead a lot faster. So on the outside, people looking in, it might look like, oh, you only just pick up the phone and call this person, or you only fill out, I'd say this, like you filled out a few SOPs for your business, right? It may seem small, but if you calculate that over time, let's just say over a year
Right.
period, compared to somebody who just, oh, I could try to do as much as possible today, and then for like the next 6 months they didn't do nothing at all. But you, every single day, you're doing like one thing. That's 365 actual tasks that you get completed in a year. Or even if you say you set 2 or 3 tasks every day, don't matter how small it is, that could take you far. A phone call could lead to an investment, that could lead to an opportunity with a client, that could lead to uh, another networking opportunity in terms of someone that has a business that collaborate with you. That could also lead to potentially growth inside of your business. So if you think of it as those small snapshots of tasks that get you ahead, now they say the tortoise win the race compared to the rabbit. It's actually true.
Definitely.
Don't rush it. Don't rush it too much. I do have my challenges still, but definitely the persistence is key to getting ahead. Just keep in mind small steps. Just keep in mind. I have to tell myself that right now too. So me saying this to
Yeah.
you right now, I hear myself telling me that. So
Yeah, there's this local saying, don't rush the brush or you spill the
yeah, don't
paint.
rush the brush. That's very true. Don't rush it. Because
But
I actually got told that
go ahead.
several times. Because I always like to, like, I want stuff done quick, but at the same
Mm,
time, I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm older, but they're like, oh man, you're still young. You got years. Like, just take your time. Don't rush it. And then I had to take that
yeah.
advice and just relax a bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. I struggle with that myself. But then I'm 33 years old right now and I feel as good as I was 22.
Same.
So I feel like the way medicine and the way fitness has taken off, like we have so much knowledge and at our hands now to go hard for the next 20 years at this level. I know 55-year-olds who are running marathons as we speak at levels of 31-year-olds. So I think this generation, I mean, obviously we've dealt with challenges when it comes to health with the COVID and all these other things. But I think when you make that conscious effort, we can redefine the way we live at these ages. And I say all that to say, you are as young as you feel.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah, yeah, man. But Tavin, thank you for coming on, and I have one more question, and then after this
Go ahead.
question, I would want you to ask people. We'll tell people how they can find you, and also share your contact details. Okay. So the final question is: a big investor is listening to the show, and he wants to put $100,000 into your company. What would you do with this money?
To be honest, I would use that towards scaling in terms of growing the business. And reason being is because even currently, the amount that I can produce or that I have is not enough. I'll be honest. So that would be my main priority. And the only thing that's limiting me right now in terms of scaling to the level that I want or working towards that level is land or property. So that's one of my main challenges right now. Well, I'm working on it, don't get me wrong, but that's one of my main challenges that would limit it. Like I could scale, but not as big and quick. So someone watching, if they're an investor, honestly speaking, that's exactly what I would do, scale.
Thank you so much, Tevin. Now, how can people find you? How can they reach you?
Reaching me is not as hard, to be honest, it's quite easy. I'm currently building a website, so that's not completed as yet, but you'll be able to reach me on there once that's completed, hopefully in the next week or two. That's what I'm working on. Alternatively, you could get me on all my social media platforms, which would be Instagram. I tend to answer a bit quick on there, as well as on Facebook. I just recently set up a new Facebook because I got banned in the past. I don't know how that happened, but also on TikTok and also on YouTube. So all of them have the same name, which is going to be TC Horticulture or at TC Horticulture on all the platforms. Alternatively, I do have my business cards and everything that's linked on a lot of those pages. So if you want to, you just check the page. You'll be able to reach out to me either via email as well. My email address would be info@tchorticulture.com. So they will be the best ways to get in contact with me. Alternatively, I'll be setting up a business phone number. Like I have a phone number currently, but I want to set it up properly where once persons reach out or message, they can catch me on WhatsApp or even call directly.
Perfect. Well, Mr. Ramsey, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. You dropped so many gems, and I think one of my favorite things that you spoke about on the website, sorry, on the show, was financial literacy, which is something that
Yeah.
I think our generation really has to take seriously. Any final words before we wrap up?
The only thing that I would say, or a few things that I would say, I am very grateful for you having me on here. And I'd like to have more conversations like this, to be honest, because I have a lot to share up here. Because I
I
read a
can
lot too.
imagine.
Yeah, I read a lot and a lot of business books, self-help. Um, so I could share quite a bit with people and a lot of my personal experiences that probably could help. But one of the main things that I would say, being that we're on the topic of entrepreneurship, is I would encourage a lot of persons who are interested to just take the time out and try to learn a bit about entrepreneurship and investing in particular. Like I'm not a heavy investor per se to say like in stocks or whatnot. I used to do it in the past, but it's something that I'm gonna start getting back into because I had a few challenges being here in Turks and being limited to like actual brokerages. So I had to find
Yeah.
loopholes to more or less set up accounts. But I would encourage, especially the younger persons, that's like even in your teens, to learn about entrepreneurship. And if you like it, you like it. And also to try as much things as possible. Um, don't look at failure as the end of you trying something and you just quit. Look at failure as learning lessons. So anytime you run into a problem, think of it as, all right, I know that I can't do it this way, so I could try it another way. And just continuously go through life like that. And not saying you're looking for failure, but as and when it happens, you're able to take on a lot more problems in terms of like when you do experience it or you do encounter it, whether that's in life, business, work, you tend to be very versatile. So embrace failure or embrace the challenges because as you grow and the more you grow, that's literally what life is almost about. Well, mostly about solving problems. So the better you are at solving problems or solving the challenges that you encounter, the faster you are and the bigger you grow.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, Tevin Ramsey, entrepreneur, businessman, family man, and advocate for agricultural development here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. I want to thank you for coming on, and I will see you guys next week on Pushing Your Peace podcast.